It's great pleasure to welcome you all to this wonderful session titled AI Power Game, National Strategies and Innovation. My name is Park Kyung-yeol, Kyung Park, from Graduate School of Science and Technology Policy in KAIST, Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. I'm your moderator today. In this session, we particularly focus on the ecosystem of AI innovation. There has been rapid technological innovation, and also there has been a proliferation of different type of AI frameworks and regulations these days. But at the same time, there are many ongoing issues and challenges that we have to work together for better AI ecosystem. So in this year, we have been preparing the session within this kind of global context and discuss the AI innovation and national strategies. So that actually lays a foundation for today's discussion with the panelists from different perspectives. So some of the important questions arise here. Who drives AI innovation? And who's responsible if there is any kind of ethical or institutional and accountability issues? And what are the core difference of AI national strategies between countries? And whose strategy has been more effective in what ways? So in order to answer these questions and think about new ways of AI innovations and national strategies, I'm really, really excited to have our wonderful group of panelists and also make a tremendous, they have tremendous, contribution to academic research and also business and also shaping process. So right next to me, let me first introduce Dr. Zack Ya-Qin. He's widely recognized as a global leader in AI and digital innovation. He's now the Dean of Tsinghua University's Institute for AI Industry Research. Also, as you probably know, he was the former president of Baidu in China. Before that, he spent more than 15 years in senior management and leadership position at Microsoft. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay. And our next panelist, Professor Ian Horrocks from Oxford University Computer Science Department. He's one of the most prominent figures and world-leading scholars in the knowledge of representation and also ontologies. He's also the co-founder of Oxford Semantic Technologies and a fellow of the Royal Society in the UK. Finally, we have Zack Kass as well. He's an internationally recognized AI advisor who works with the leading companies such as Morgan Stanley and Coca-Cola and also Samsung Electronics. He was the head of the go-to-market unit at the OpenAI and bringing a deep expertise and insights in long-term AI strategies and its socio-economic impacts. So I'd like to start with a big picture question first to three of you guys to set the stage. So in this year, in 2025, we have been seeing the extremely fast-changing environment of AI innovation. In the beginning of the year, there was an emergence of DeepSeek, and there has been ongoing kind of competition between US and China, and then there has been different type of global AI governance, etc. But at the same time, there is a growing recognition that global cooperation is very essential. So nation states are racing to invest in AI infrastructure, but they are also exploring the ways to collaborate each other. So how do you diagnose the current mega trends in AI innovation system and also governance? And so I'd like to ask each of you to share your insight first, about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we can continue our discussion. So from Dr. Zhang.
Good morning. Very nice to be back to the World Knowledge Forum. This is my third forum, and every time I just enjoy the interaction with our Korea audience. Yeah. So let me try to be as succinct as I could be, because these are some huge questions. You asked a question about who should drive innovation, and to me, it has to be the entrepreneurs, the innovators. And the government does play a role, an important role sometimes, in defining the strategy in a holistic way. But end of the day, it is the technologists, the scientists, and the entrepreneurs who make all the difference. I think it's true in China, it is true in US, it's true in UK and the rest of the world. Specifically in China, obviously, Chinese government has been very proactive in defining the national innovation and the industry policies. The most recent update is about 2 weeks ago. The Ministry of Information and Industry Technology just came up with what it called the AI Plus Action Plan. So it defines the implementation and innovation of AI in 6 different dimensions. I'm not going to go through detail. It's a public document, you can see. But does contain our research development for AI. How do you lend AI in different industries, international collaboration, governance, talent, among other things. And it is a pretty comprehensive and holistic document. And you mentioned about DeepSeek, and I work very closely with the Chinese entrepreneurs and companies, including DeepSeek. Some of you probably have seen our joint paper between Tsinghua and DeepSeek with ByteDance, Alibaba, Baidu. We work with those guys, especially our students. To me, DeepSeek, which came out in the R1, came out in January, represents a significant innovation and also a new path for AI. In the past, will continue that you need, companies, hyperscalers, need a lot of GPUs, a lot of data, a lot of computation to make frontier models. I think that continued to be important. What DeepSeek did is to use a fraction of the computational power and develop something a lot more efficient, smarter, whether it's in the overall system architecture, but also in the reinforcement learning, the GRPO, MOE, and all the new technologies. It is also open source, so they not only tell you what it is, but also tell you how to do it. They have papers disclose the algorithms in a very, very open way, and also use the MIT license that is extremely open and generous. So that I think represents a significant step in terms of being open, not only in China, but also globally. Yeah, we can talk more about that. But
Thank you, Dr. Zhang. And Professor Ian Horrocks?
Hello. Yes, similarly, I'd like to say thanks for the invitation. Always a pleasure to come here to Korea. So, as far as the introduction is concerned, I agree with most of what Professor Zhang said. I think an interesting thing in particular about DeepSeek is that it demonstrated that actually we were perhaps a bit complacent in our idea that all we needed to do to continue to this kind of exponential increase in the performance of AI systems was just to throw more and more computational power at it. Actually, DeepSeek showed that we need to be much smarter, and actually we can achieve similar or better results with far fewer resources by just using them more intelligently. And I think this is going to be something, well, we can already see many of the other big players in AI are following a similar strategy these days and starting to develop much more complex architectures for their AI systems that try to deploy more deep reasoning. As far as government policy is concerned, I'm a bit skeptical about government policies in general because I think the rate of development of the technology is so fast that government thinking and government policy is always somehow lagging behind. And I think if we look at the major kind of policy documents, certainly in the US and the EU, we can see that they focus quite a lot on investment in infrastructure, which is reflecting this, what I would say is a rapidly becoming out-of-date idea that all we need to do is throw more and more computational power at the problem. Moreover, I'd say that governments, the amount of money they can invest in that is quite small compared to industry. So the difference they can make there is quite small. And it would be actually much better for them to focus on longer term research, investing in universities and so on, which is where the new ideas for the future of AI will come from a little bit further down the track, and leave industry to do the shorter term research and development, which they're very good at. And I think this should be viewed as a kind of synergy that in general is a good thing. And the last point I think that is interesting to think about is kind of regulation in terms of trying to address some of the problems that arise when you get these kinds of technological revolutions like AI is certainly going to be. I mean, this is going to be a problem most likely. If we look at similar eras in the past, like the Industrial Revolution, we can see that there was quite a period of sort of societal churn, problems that arose. It's quite difficult to deal with that. And it took many decades, actually, in the Industrial Revolution for this to settle down into a sort of new structure of society and regulation. Hopefully we can do a bit better today. But I don't know, we'll have to see how that pans out. I imagine there will be some societal and political problems going forward as AI revolutionizes the way society works. I think that's probably all I want to say right now. I'll hand over to Zack.
Thanks, Ian. Good to see everyone. Thanks for having me. It's very nice to be here in Seoul. I think that I try to frame... I would agree with everything that's been said, and all I would try to do is to frame the idea of innovation in sort of two camps. There's scientific innovation, and then there's application innovation, and they actually don't move in parallel the way we think that they do. GPT 3.5, for example, came out in May 2022. ChatGPT, the application on which it was built, didn't arrive until November. And so we're reminded that the science often leads the application and the development by quite a bit. And that seems to be happening more and more. I would argue that if we never built another model after GPT-5, we would have a long time to go before we actually found all of the value in the science itself. I also agree that I think the open source community can and should continue to be a driver of adoption. It does two things. One, it means that more people have access, so the diffusion of the science is good, and that the cost inevitably comes down because open source is driving at, among other things, reducing the actual resource requirements, which DeepSeek R1 did. 55 cents per million tokens is what DeepSeek R1 costs. That compares to $60 per million tokens, which is what GPT-4 cost when we launched it. And that is a remarkable achievement. I think even more important somehow than the models getting better is how low the inference costs have gotten. On the innovation of the application side, this is where it's going to require a private and public coordination. And what's happening right now, I think, is we are seeing this sort of lag and almost staleness in the rate at which this technology is being adopted. And I write about this quite extensively in what's called a societal threshold. What machines can do no longer really answers the question, what will they do? What society wants them to do answers the question. And we're now seeing tremendous pushback, some of it coming from Europe, some of it coming from the US, on applications themselves. And the EU AI Act has done quite a bit, I think, to actually stymie enterprise adoption, where the technology exists, but enterprises are afraid to use it. Even in the US, we're seeing quite a bit of resistance to even autonomous vehicles. As for regulation, I crusade on three pieces of regulation that I think government should care about, and basically nothing else. Where Professor Horrocks and I disagree is I think that the distribution problem is an important one, but one that we can't even imagine yet. What we can imagine today is the alignment problem, the explainability problem, and the bad acting problem. And not enough is being done to address those three problems. On alignment, we still don't have international alignment standards. It's a good thing that the companies themselves are quite good at actually self-regulating. And we've made a lot of alignment progress. On explainability, we don't yet appreciate the consequences of having machines that are very smart, but that cannot explain their behavior. We do not want to live in a world where critical decisions are made in black boxes. Governments have to be smarter about passing explainability standards. And on bad acting, I don't think governments have yet appreciated how much and how dangerous a low resource bad actor can be. I, for one, think the world is going to get a lot better, but I think the path to a much better future is going to have to go through hard lessons when we discover that a certain percentage of the population that wants to do harm can now do a lot more harm. And we should be passing policy aggressively that says if you tear at the fabric of society using this technology, we will put you away forever. Because if we don't, it will get weird. It will get weird quickly. And that will be one of the great things that I think sets back progress on AI and broadly society.
Right. Thank you very much. Actually, we have second round questions, but I just wanted to just follow this kind of natural flow of the discussion. So there was a discussion on the gap between the policy side and the governance and normative side, and then technological innovation. And then Horrocks, you also mentioned about this kind of pacing problem. Has been the increased in this AI innovation ecosystem, and also when AI, is developed, is much more like technological orientation. But at the same time, when the AI or any type of emerging technology is implemented in our society, it's very much political, and then sometimes culture, and then the contextual, the factors is really really important. So with this background, actually, there has been different type of stakeholders, academia, government, and entrepreneurs. I know, Dr. Zhang also mentioned, and business sector, and even user perspectives. How we can actually collaborate all together from different perspectives, because different actors and stakeholders have a different interests and also different views on AI innovation. So how we can actually collaborate for the better AI ecosystem from different perspectives. Dr. Zhang?
Well, I think the center of innovation comes from industry, especially if you look at the key innovation in the last 5 to 10 years in AI. Came from companies like Google, Microsoft, and obviously OpenAI and Meta or NVIDIA, all these companies. University, I think, play obviously a critical role. The number one, the best product we have is people, talent. And obviously, we want to work with universities in advancing some of the scientific innovation. So I think it's complementary. University should not do the industry job. You can't, especially with the current hyperscaler resource. But it does need collaboration. Government, I think, should do the minimal things to making sure there is level, even playing field, in the sense it should fund some of the basic fundamental research in the area. For example, Zack and Professor Horrocks just mentioned, there's a lot of fundamental issues we don't understand. We know it works, we don't know why it works. So, and also the government should make sure there is certain level of governance in the sense of the AI safety issue, defining the boundary and the red lines of AI security and safety. One of the things actually China did, in fact, I proposed many years ago, together with my friends Stuart Russell and Joshua Benjo, is to have identification for AI generated contents. Right? Right now, if you do advertising, you have to put this as ads. But if it's AI generated content, you don't have to see anything. And so in China, for the first time, actually starting September 1st this year, anything that AI generate, you have to put this as AI generate, whether it's a image, it's a content, words, or person. But I think there are a lot of things government can do. Yeah. But government should not step in to do the industry job, right? It is entrepreneurs and business who are the center of the innovation.
Okay, over to you, Yan.
Yeah, okay, so I totally agree with what Professor Zhang said, that in this kind of 5 to 10 year time frame, that's where industry can do the best job. They have massive resources that they can put into this research and development effort that pays dividends within that kind of time frame. In contrast, universities can work on a much longer time frame. And if we think about some of these companies that Professor Zhang mentioned, like Google, OpenAI, Facebook, and so on, where did they come from in the first place? Of course, they came out of the talent that was generated by universities, but that's in a longer time frame. I think government can, and I view this as synergistic. It's not a problem, it's a good thing, and government policy should try to support this synergy and not to try to push either industry or university to do things that they're not good at. Just another quick word on regulation. I mean, I totally agree with what Zack said. You know, potentially there are some really serious problems coming down the track. Transparency is really important. I completely agree with that as well. There's a lot of work going into trying to improve the transparency of these kind of black box AI systems. But one thing I think that's also important to recognize is that with the internet and AI, this is inherently transnational. So it's impossible for any kind of single government to really fix that problem, because these days bad actors can be in a completely different jurisdiction. They can do all kinds of stuff without any comeback whatsoever from the jurisdiction where the bad action is targeted. That's a big problem, and I think, you know, we're going to have to address that. Unfortunately, it looks to be a very hard problem because the current state of the world doesn't really look as though trying to develop international ways to regulate these problems is going to be very easy to do.
That all sounded right. That all sounded right.
Sure. Maybe then coming back to your Ian's question, and then because AI development and also use of AI is transnational. There's no border of the AI innovation. So but at the same time, there has been a proliferation of AI regulation in each countries, even Sub-Saharan Africa. You know, they announced the AI strategy and AI governance regulatory frameworks, and also recently, end of July, Trump administration, they announced the AI action plan, followed by the Chinese response, and also before that, even last year, March 2024, there was a AI resolution in the United Nations. So more than 190 countries, they agreed upon these kind of AI regulation. But at the same time, the different regulatory frameworks, there has been a conflicting rationales between the the regulations. How can we ensure? How can you make this internationally agreed AI regulation framework in terms of trustworthiness and transparency and fairness, etc.? Maybe we can start from Dr. Zhang.
Well, it's hard. First of all, it does require international, global coordination. But it is hard because first, technology moves so fast, especially last year. There's a lot of reasoning model, the agentic AI, and most companies are busy with the arms race. So they fall actually behind in terms of ensuring the safety of AI. If you look at last year, I think there is a setback in the AI safety and AI governance, especially with the new government, U.S. Has now been very friendly to the governance UK actually is a pioneer, is a leader in AI safety. So I think what we need to do is making sure there is significant research, because there's a lot of, as I mentioned, there's a lot of scientific issues. So some of the frontier scientists and the technologists need to be engaged. We need some of the best students to work on AI safety, whether it's a data issue, alignment issue, or it's just security and safety boundary and guarantee. And second, the policymakers need to work with the technologists and industry, because there are things the government and the policymakers might not understand, because technology continue to evolve, and be open-minded. And the third thing is countries, unfortunately, there's this geopolitical issue make this worse. We need a lot of collaboration, and it's blocked or it's handicapped by the geopolitical tension. I just think global organizations like United Nations, or the organization we actually started, the four of us, Stu Russell, Yashua Benjo, NDL, and myself, we started the international dialogue on AI safety, and been around for three years, and actually it's a prelude to some of the summit in UK, US, and France. So I hope this international dialogue continue to move on, whether it's track 1 or 2 or track 3. But it's hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard. I agree that obviously, trying to develop international dialogue and collaboration is a good thing, but yeah, it's very difficult. Our current transnational organizations, such as the United Nations, unfortunately haven't proven to be incredibly effective. One additional interesting thing that I'd like to sort of throw into the mix is I also think that it takes time for society to adapt to these kind of revolutions in technology. And again, going back to my analogy with the Industrial Revolution, what we could see there is that there was a huge change in society. The middle class expanded massively. Education expanded massively, so the population became much more educated. And I think we're going to see societal adaptations also brought about by the AI revolution. As yet, it's not completely clear what those adaptations will be.
My, I don't know if this is a popular hot take, but I guess by definition it's not. But my hot take is that I actually think that we, for better or worse, are going to depend on industrial self-regulation and self-governance for a while. I think having spent time on Capitol Hill, I'm not even sure that the current administration in the White House could do much in the way of informing smart policy, because policymakers have absolutely no idea how any of this works. And in fact, they know less about machines than the average person, I've discovered. They are our politicians, anyways. So what I think we are seeing is a world in which, thankfully, the discussions are happening with great scientists and the foremost thinkers in the practice that we didn't see early internet, and we certainly did not see early social media, that we are seeing now with AI, where a lot of people have rallied around critical governance practices. But I do think that transnational governance is a panacea that we probably should not expect for quite some time. And in the meantime, I think we are going to be dependent on leaders inside the industry passing and promoting safe and reasonable practices.
Right. Any other comments on that? Okay. So we've been discussing a lot of things, very important issues on the AI governance side, and the role of governments and then other stakeholders. So coming back to your questions, there has been a gap between this, scientific innovation within the business sector or entrepreneurship. There has been gap between the scientific innovation and also application innovation. How should we address this issue?
So a technological threshold asks the question, what can a machine do? And a societal threshold asks the question, what do we want a machine to do? And this is something that I've written about a lot and just sort of started staring at recently. And there are incredible examples. I'll provide one for context because I think it's super important. When the elevator was introduced, Otis Elevator in 1854, he invented this safer people mover. And his idea was people were falling down mine shafts on rope and pulley systems. And what if we just created a fail-safe to catch the rope and pulley? And he introduced the people mover in 1854. And he sold a bunch of these to tall buildings. And by 1856, building owners started calling Otis Elevator and they were complaining. They said, no one's using the elevators. And he said, what's the problem? He said, well, everyone thinks that they're going to die still. So Otis said, okay, well, we have a problem. We've met the technological threshold. This is my words, not his. We've built a machine that empirically is safe at moving people up and down a tall building. They haven't decided they want to use it. How do we get them to use it? So he comes up with 3 ways that he thinks he can meet the societal threshold. 1, he puts a mirror in the back of every elevator. So when you walk in, you'll be distracted by your own image. 2, he puts music in every elevator. So when you walk in, you'll be a little entertained. And 3, he puts a person in the elevator. He puts an elevator operator, a human, to give you the sense of human control. And of course it works. It moves the societal threshold and we start using elevators. Now I tell this story to remind people that things that we use every day, our ancestors at one point were quite afraid to use. And there's a long history of this. What's particularly fascinating now is our status quo bias, which drives most of our societal threshold, is actually serving super important roles now. Not every threshold should fall. So when people ask the question, how do we move the societal threshold? The first question we should ask is, should the threshold move? Should we ever have given kids social media? No. That was a societal threshold that should not have moved. DDT, a chemical that we sprayed on a lot of crops and caused a lot of harm, a societal threshold that we moved back and then moved back. Then, of course, we have these really complex ones that deal with ethics and morality. CRISPR, right? Should we play God? Now, I bring all this up because I don't think it's as easy as saying, how do we get people to adopt AI? I think it's a much more interesting question, which is, what do we actually want to adopt? And in a world where we were very quick to adopt the digital technologies of our age that have come with a lot of some, honestly, terrible consequences, especially to the younger generation, I do think it's important at this point to actually take this moment and say, what is the limit of automation? What do we want machines to do and what don't we? And in the case, of course, of autonomous vehicles, it is mind-numbing. It is so head-scratching to me that we have not adopted autonomous vehicles yet, given that 1.3 million people die on the roadways. But it doesn't mean that everything should be adopted, and we have to be really, really careful about that.
Similarly, in academic research, to Ian, so there's been the HCI type of research framework perspective, and also human in the loop in the AI developments. How the academic research incorporate this kind of societal conditions in AI innovation? Yeah. Hybrid AI. I mean, you've been talking.
Yeah, so I'm very interested in hybrid AI. I think one of the problems with the current architectures is that they are still fundamentally based on these trained models, which are basically trained on discourse. And actually, their kind of knowledge of the world is really just in a way, quite surprising emergent property of this training on huge amounts of discourse. And you can see that this works up to a certain point, but then they run into problems when we try to use them for more complex tasks. Chess playing is a very interesting example where even the latest generation of AI models turn out to be very poor at chess playing because they don't have any cognitive model about the game of chess, and they often just make illegal moves. And even if they make legal moves, they're only playing at a relatively low level compared to at least decent quality human players. I read recently that the latest AI models can easily be defeated by a 1977 chess program running on a games console, and an Atari games console, which is quite funny. So I think we need this much more hybrid model of AI where we try to augment the trained models with also some curated models that have a much deeper understanding of the structure of the world, and in particular structures that, like chess, where there are fixed and extremely well-known rules of the game that could be built into systems, and instead of just trying to learn those rules with a kind of sledgehammer approach using training over huge amounts of data, which actually only produces moderately effective results.
So related to Professor Jan Horrocks' point, Dr. Zhang, you have extensive leadership experiences even in the academic research and also business sector as well. How would you like to share your insights? How to strengthen the link between the academic research and business application and entrepreneurship, etc.?
Well, in the history of human knowledge, we're the World Knowledge Forum. Sometime you have a scientific discovery first, then you have an engineering implementation. Sometimes actually you build things first, then many years later you have a scientific explanation. Right now in AI, it's probably more engineering than science, and so I think university academics, people like us, need to work with industry, but look at some of the fundamental issues. I'm a big fan of the hybrid AI, and if you look at right now, the large model is highly probabilistic, empirical. And the law of physics and a lot of the known knowledge database need to be incorporated to come out with something better. And the university need to do that. But looking back in the AI history, a lot of the stuff happening today was based on a lot of the research did much earlier. So I think there's no contradiction. We just need to make sure we focus doing research, especially right now at university, because students are so smart. We have a lot of students. I was talking with Professor Horrocks just before the meeting. They intend to look at a model and doing small tickling and publish a paper, right? And I encourage my students to work on something longer. I don't care how many papers published. But work on something more fundamental. Industry can do that a lot better than universities.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? Okay, Jan, if you want to.
I just wanted to come back to the point that Zack was making about self-regulation of industry. And actually, I think that this, I kind of agree with that, because I think that governments are just too slow in catching up, and this kind of transnational issue is too hard to solve. But on the other side, I don't think we should just trust industry to do that blindly. I think this also feeds into this idea I was mentioning about societal change. So I see a lot of young people here in the audience, you need to force industry to do that by, choosing only to use products where you think that the people behind the product are behaving well, and doing something to think about this idea of addressing problems of AI. They won't necessarily do that just naturally. They're largely driven by profit motives, and we have to make sure that profit kind of follows ethical considerations to some extent.
So before I just give you final remarks, I'd like to just open up the floor, because only just 7 minutes to go. So this is today Friday's morning, so it's really difficult for students and also workers to participate in this forum. But thank you very much once again for your participation. So is there any comments or questions? Then if you could just briefly introduce yourself and raise your hand, and please share your comments. Sure, please.
I'm Una from LG, and thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives. I'm wondering whether winner would take all in AI industry. The winner could be a country or it could be a big tech. I'm asking this question because when I'm looking into the United States startup and regulation, I found that a lot of startups are struggling because big techs like OpenAI or Google's are coming into the startup area. And at the same time, a few weeks or 2 weeks before, United States had a AI pact called Political Action Committee, and I can see that industries cannot self-regulate itself because they have influence on politics. So, what's your opinion about winner take all, and if we should not follow that scene, what we have to do to ban that?
Right. Who wants to address briefly?
I think it's great to have a competition between companies, okay? And you know, if you look, companies compete with companies, U.S. companies compete with U.S. companies, with Chinese companies, with Korean companies. I think that's okay. It's just, I mean, OpenAI compete with Anthropic, with Grok, and Meta and others. In China, at one point, there are 200 companies doing big models. Right now, there are probably 10. Eventually, maybe 2 or 3, right? So I think that natural competition is okay. It's market driven. When I was the head of Baidu, my biggest competitors were from within China. We kind of kill each other. Sorry for that words. But it's a market driven. I don't think it's winners take all, because eventually you're going to have probably 8 to 10 big foundation horizontal models, but there will be hundreds or even thousands of smaller models built on top of that. Right? It's a big ecosystem that might be 1,000 times bigger than just the foundation model itself, and that it's for different industry, for different countries. So I think you're going to have a much bigger industry that it's not going to be just few winners.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. And I also think that what happens is that over a slightly longer time frame, these very large companies actually find it a bit more difficult to really innovate at the cutting edge. And you see the emergence of small companies with really really new ideas, and they can, in the current environment, they can rapidly grow, as we've seen. I mean, OpenAI, when were they founded? Not really very long ago in the scheme of things. So I think we'll continue to see for quite a while this kind of environment where new ideas come along and new players can rapidly enter the market.
Yeah, I agree. I think if AGI is a race, then I think it's a prize that will be shared pretty equally. The diffusion, to me, the precipitous decline in inference cost is the best evidence. I think it's just the best evidence we have that it will be very hard for there to be a technological hegemony built around AI. The science is evolving too quickly, and the faster it approaches a utility. I mean, we can run a GPT-4 model on a CPU now. I mean, it drains the battery and it's a little slow, but it works. So that's basically AI at the cost of electricity, which at this rate has declined also very precipitously. And in the scope of the world, I think that there are still a lot of problems that we need to solve that AI can help solve. And I'm pretty fixated on the idea of just this incredible diffusion event where everyone has access to abundant intelligence or unmetered intelligence, and what that might do.
Thank you very much for your questions and also response. So I'd like to have a couple more questions altogether. Final questions? Yes, please.
I want to ask about the young generation about using AI. Many elementary, middle school, or high school students are using AI in the school, but I think this might hinder their logical thinking. And do you guys have any opinion about how young people should use AI in their learning? Thank you.
Wow, another PhD level questions as well. So AI education in primary and secondary school education.
My wife is a first grade teacher, so I'll start by saying that. And I have spent a lot of time staring at AI in education. I have a couple things to say on this. The first, education is pretty fundamentally broken. So let's start by just saying this. K through 12 education globally is not very good. And the reason it's not very good is we have not actually evolved it over 150 years. The answer to it is not necessarily children staring at their screens more. And in fact, one of the crusades I'm on is to convince people broadly to get off their device. I actually think screen time is one of the great plagues in modern, healthy, luxurious societies. We forgot along the way that the whole point of being human is to spend time with other humans, ideally outside. If we have the opportunity now to fix the education system, it will be, I think, in providing not tools that automate a child's thinking, but tools that help a child learn at the rate at which they should learn. And there are a few companies doing this in the United States. One of them that you will hear a lot more about over the next 5 years is a company called Alpha School, alpha.school. And Alpha School has pioneered a 2-hour learning model where children spend 2 hours a day in Scholastic. They've bifurcated Scholastic and social learning, and children spend 2 hours a day at a terminal, at a device, doing AI-guided learning that is empirically more effective than 7 hours in a classroom, learning at the same rate as everyone else. And then they spend 5 hours a day outside doing game theory and physical activities and life skills. That to me is a step towards a panacea, a world where we are raising the entire soul and spirit of a child to be a human, and where we are not confining them to a classroom at a desk, but actually encouraging them to explore a world and using AI to supercharge that.
So any final comments if you have one? Okay, so I think we already run out of time. Thank you very much for your participation. Then let's give a round of big applause to our panelists. Okay, thank you.